Okay, quick multiple choice practice. I made this one myself, and I think it's fairly tricky, fairly representative of some of the type of questions you will see on the exam. It is based off of an excerpt of a speech delivered by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in 2019 after she had an experience on the steps of the Capitol with a fellow congressman. So you're probably familiar with the speech, hopefully, or familiar with the incident if you keep up with politics. Perhaps you haven't read the speech, though. This is just an excerpt. I included maybe a third of it, and the first paragraph has been edited just to kind of get things moving. And there are 5 questions that go along with it. So what I'd like you to do is give yourself 7 minutes to read it and answer the questions. And do your best, and I'm going to go over the answers and why I made them the correct answers and what I was going for. All right, so hopefully you've answered the questions. So this one, obviously, it has one instance of very harsh language, but to start things off, I could have had a question about, like, what is the rhetorical purpose of the profanity that's included? It's quoted. It's not like she was just losing her emotion and deciding to swear. She was quoting what was said back to her, and you could have, had many questions about the rhetorical utility of the profanity that she uses in this. Because it's doing what? It's appealing to the emotion of the listeners. It's like, wow, that guy horrifies. It should horrify most readers or listeners to the speech that a congressman would say that to someone in front of reporters. I mean, I guess the fact that reporters are there probably shouldn't amplify your disgust, but I mean, in a way it does. It's like, wow, you really are shameless and kind of a monster, right? But I don't ask any questions about the profanity. I start off with, what is the tone of the first paragraph? And the best answer is the phrase, matter of fact. It's not jubilant. Jubilant's happy. There's nothing vague about it. She's very methodical in presenting what happened. It's not condescending. There are points where you could perhaps argue that she is condescending to Yoho, maybe, but certainly not in the first paragraph. And it's not hysterical either. And I threw hysterical in there because if you were just kind of reading it fast and you saw where she says fucking bitch, well, you might be like, oh, well, that sounds pretty emotional. But she's quoting it. She's doing it matter-of-factly. So that was the correct answer, matter of fact. All right, rhetorical purpose of the third paragraph. Oops. Well, you can already see that it was to establish the central claim of the speech. When I gave this with my first class, I think like 80% of students put to enumerate every instance where the speaker experienced sexist behavior. Now, I tweaked the question, and I'll see how my fourth block does with it. At first, I just had the answer as to enumerate instances where the speaker experienced sexist behavior, which is a good answer, but the best answer is the rhetorical purpose is to establish the central claim of the speech. So hopefully you didn't put to enumerate every instance where the speaker experienced sexist behavior, because we know that's probably not every single instance. So that makes it easy to dismiss. That probably makes the question too easy. But the point is, if you see one of these questions about rhetorical purpose, look real carefully when they refer to structure, when they refer to conclusions, when they refer to advancing the argument, when they're not, because a lot of the answers they'll provide are simply summarizing the speech, and they want you to be thinking about what's the argument, how is it advancing the argument. So if an answer is suitable for that, then it's probably the best answer. What is the central claim of this? Let's look at the third paragraph. It's at the end of it. This is not new, this being this behavior she's experienced, and that is the problem. That combined right there is her thesis. Her central claim, as they would call it. Okay, in the fourth paragraph, she does not reflect on her behavior with scorn. She does not counter ideas. She builds on an idea introduced in the previous paragraph. I feel like I always see questions that involve understanding the relationship between paragraphs and the idea, understanding the concept that a good argument builds on itself. And you can see the cohesion of her ideas, indeed, in this speech. Okay, next, in the fifth paragraph, the speaker recounts the prior day's events in order to Oh, right. Yeah. This one, let's look at the fifth paragraph real quick. It's interesting. Yesterday, Yoho decided to come on the floor and make excuses for his behavior, and I could not let that go. So what we have right there is she's explaining why she's motivated to speak. So that's exigence. Establish the exigence. And then finally, which comes closest to the meaning of paragraph 6? The answer, this is another one that a lot of students missed, I think because they were trying to get an answer in, and simply because some students were like, well, I just screwed up counting the paragraphs. Paragraph 6 is the second to last paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What I do have issue with is using women, our wives, and daughters as shields and excuses for poor behavior. So the best answer is that apologies are meaningless from someone who uses sexist rhetorical tactics. The answer where she says she will not tolerate Yoho's behavior as a self-respecting woman, that's an okay answer, but that really describes the final paragraph, the 7th paragraph. So that kind of illustrates something to keep in mind when you're working through any multiple choice quiz. If they ask about what happens in paragraph 3, paragraph 6, especially in the latter questions where you do have to count, make sure you're counting correctly. It's so much easier if you have it on paper and you can number the paragraphs. And but if you're doing this digitally, just be attentive to that. I don't know. I wish I had a solution to that, but I don't, other than to just emphasize the value of making sure you're correctly noting which paragraph is which. Okay, that's all I wanted to go over, but I think there's some valuable just skills to reinforce in this practice. I'll try to make more of these little videos as we get closer to the exam.